Chelsea Rossney, welcome to Business Not As Usual. It is amazing to see your smiling face here today. So, you have 26 years in the technology sector, which is extraordinary in and of itself. Tell me a little bit about your journey.
Yes, 26 years now. It's a little bit scary to say out loud, but 26 years in IT and the last 16 with HP. I started out humbly as in a telesales kind of role in the peripheral IT business, a really wonderful independent company, a reseller in the channel in Australia. So it was a really great step in, and it was so great. I stayed there for just under 10 years. I had a wonderful journey with that company, which they sponsored me through study to formalise management and marketing. It was a series of roles that went through sales management, marketing, and state management along the way. And through that time, I actually had a lot of dealings with HP as a reseller, selling the HP products and portfolio. And amazing how networks can roll. I was able to look at an opportunity that came up with HP through that experience and network. And the last 16 years has been history.
Incredible. So, can you tell me about your role on a day-to-day basis now? What does that look like?
Sure. So I'm at the forefront of the commercial channel, and the teams that I lead are committed to working with our channel partners and solving the most pressing problems for their customers. So they're dealing with the end user market across many segments, from SMB to large corporate, education, all kinds of industries. So it's the HP teams that are responsible for enabling the partners to go out there and sell the HP solutions to those end customers.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about leadership and gender diversity. I want to talk about your leadership and, in particular, the HP Women's Impact Network and what it does.
Yes, thank you. That's one of my most favourite topics. It's a passion project of mine. A couple of years ago, there was the opportunity to form part of a global initiative at HP, an Australian Women's Impact Network. And as a result, I was fortunate to be elected the chair. And since that, over the last 2 years, our whole three core pillars focus on attracting, including, and developing and fostering the talent within HP, and really as thought leaders within the industry itself. There's, I guess, a huge opportunity for attracting more women in leadership to the tech industry, where the balance is certainly not there. There's a long way to go. And so all of the initiatives, as an example, across the year, we're focused on that internal development for the staff and fostering the talent to step forward in our own individual business. But we've had some great external networking and thought leadership events as well, where we are showing another side to HP that is hopefully attracting those other talents to come into IT and potentially at some point possibly HP.
And it's extraordinary to witness, so kudos to you. I think you're certainly leading the way, so well done. Now, let's talk a little bit about your experience in channel, which means you're dealing with both resellers and small businesses. And I know a lot of people that are watching this will have experience with B2B and B2C. So can you talk a little bit about the similarities and the differences, I guess, of a double-sided marketplace and engaging with both?
Look, it's interesting when you look at our partner portfolio, there are a lot of similarities with the resellers who are serving the SMB market. And at the moment, they're facing very similar challenges, as an example, where they've all had to pivot and work on how to decentralize their workforce and restructure their own personnel, just like the small businesses that they're going out and consulting and serving. In addition, they've had to accommodate how to motivate and enable their staff to adapt in their own small, potentially reseller business. We have obviously small and large resellers, but regardless of size, there's been the same transformations required, be it at HP and a global scale. We're going through a lot of the same things to motivate and strengthen the resilience amongst our teams, just to be able to go out and continue to do the service and the function that you offer as an organisation. So lots of similarities, and of course, the big piece is that large or small economically at the moment, the conditions have shifted. What you may have set out for your FY20 plan last year in that planning phase has thrown everyone for a spin. And again, it doesn't matter if you're a small SMB or governments needing to look at deferring projects and, you know, reinvesting into more appropriate areas. It's similar for all.
And Chelsea, I think that's really important messaging because so many people feel like they're isolated through this time. And I think it's great to kind of point out that whether you're a small business, a medium business, or in the case of HP, a very large global business, we're all experiencing to a degree a number of the same issues and adversity and things to overcome this year. So thank you for highlighting that. And now I want to talk a bit about business has obviously taken a hit through COVID, and many of us are looking at our balance sheets and trying to cost cut or look at where we can save. I want to flip that on its head a little bit and talk about ways to create additional revenue streams.
Look, we've seen, I think, like most, amazing creativity have come out of small business that have been put in a position to come out fighting. And, if it's Archie Rose Distillery moving from a gin business to a sanitizer function, or Flatiron boutique clothing brand moves to designer face masks, protecting revenues, and moving into loungewear, in clothes, or at the same time, we're all seeing cafes and restaurants who traditionally weren't takeaway oriented. They've changed their whole business model to accommodate. So I think the key has been that being open to change and knowing, well, to survive, you must find that creativity and try new things. I think that's what everyone has had to be experimental with. And I think for many, there has been silver linings.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned silver linings, and they are brilliant case studies. So thank you for sharing. I think we've seen so many people who have been turbocharged, suddenly into having to digitize what may have been traditionally a bricks and mortar business. Can you talk to me specifically about some examples with HP as a big business and what that's looked like for you guys?
So at HP, like I mentioned before, the biggest thing was, globally there's 55,000 people also now working, 44,000 of those people working from home. And in Australia, basically 95% or 98% of our workforce also needed to quickly pivot. We were very familiar with remote working, of course, and a large part of our org in Australia is very much front-facing and sales-focused go-to-market. So we were very mobile. Unfortunately, we're a tech company which was supporting that already, but nothing actually supported the change to 100% of your week. So like I mentioned earlier, that adaptation for us was big. And the first things that I thought of with my team and on the wider organisation was how do we ensure that our staff are prepped and resilient, fit for the challenge mentally and physically to adjust to the change. And so we worked on those areas. And in addition, we had to really double down on the enablement for the strategies that were going to change to a digital platform. So being a go-to-market, we're here to talk about the services and solutions and products that we have to solve business problems. So we needed to work out how to do that well virtually. So that was fun. We've done challenges whereby the sales teams needed to practice the new skills online. As I have, like doing meetings like this, I've had to practice also how to become articulate and get my message across to the internal teams and to those partners that we're working with on a virtual platform. So we did workshops, we did challenges to do that, and it really has paid off.
I am fascinated listening to you. Something as large as HP, 55,000 staff globally, is it? How do you, as a big business, make those changes so quickly?
I was impressed myself to be a part of this organisation, and it's really interesting that the more you were talking to individuals over the last 6 to 9 months is that what you've started to see happening as the norm in your organisation isn't actually going on everywhere. And to that point, we did move really well. And from the global leadership down and our country management, our MD, Mike Boyle, and all of our senior leadership team, as I mentioned earlier, forefront for us was make sure the teams and the individuals are okay. If everyone is supported, and that's been a big piece, is how we can actually transition people to be 100% at home. We just knew that you had to actually accept some flexibility and change, and that actually gave the support that was required to allow people then to get on with the business in a different format, which included things like hours had to shift, workspaces were changing, they were sharing with their husbands, wives, the children, their pets, and we've embraced all of those things. And so when I've had team members suggesting that I need to set up my children for their lesson online, we just block things out of the diary, and then they're independent and self-motivated enough then to work out when they can fit that next period in for themselves for the outcomes they need to achieve at our work. So with that attitude, everyone getting on board with that globally and very much our Australian business, it was easier to pivot because everyone just saw that's the direction we had to head, and everything we did kept driving back to those requirements of change.
And again, I think that just shows such incredible leadership on your behalf and, you know, as HP as a company overall, because you're not necessarily used to, as a big business, being able to be flexible and nimble. And there's often a lot of bureaucracy involved with big organizations. So, yeah, kudos again. It's quite extraordinary to witness. Shifting gears.
I think there was,
yes?
I was just going to add one thing, Lisa, on that is something for all businesses to remember, is the traditional sense of what's productive and outcome driven, or how you receive the outcomes you're hoping for from your teams, is a big shift in itself. And that was to the notes we mentioned before around where you needed to allow the flexibility to let the independence and motivation grow out of that individual who knows what they need to get done. It's around the high level thinking opportunities too. So, and that mental strength that we talked about earlier, we've really been encouraging the walk meeting, that because people had to get out of the space that is now crowded with so many requirements. They didn't have the opportunity to go to the office. So I think traditionally an employer wouldn't expect that their teams on a phone call, walking down along the beach, if they happen to be beachside or city side or parkside, wherever they are. But they could be on a conference call and adding just as much value as they were strapped to their desk that would have ordinarily been in their office. And I think these are the mental shifts, and you know a lot about that from your work from anywhere piece, where it was vital, and these should be things that we should take forward with the learnings out of this change.
So what I'll say to that is, I think it's extraordinary watching how much you guys have changed as a company in a very short period of time. It's only this time last year that I was in Tokyo speaking for HP alongside a well-renowned professor in Tokyo. And I was talking about, at the time, flexible workplaces, working from anywhere, how it was all about, you know, mental health and rituals and routines and disciplines. And that was really forward thinking at the time. So to see HP adapt that and it become part of your everyday vernacular is quite amazing. So again, well done.
Thank you.
I want to shift gears again and go back to small businesses, because they may not have, and often don't have, the same resources as a big business like HP. So what are some small but impactful things that they may be able to take on immediately?
I would recommend that have a look first. Do quick polls. There's lots of things you can do now, even free, Survey Monkeys and the like, is go out to your database, have a look at your client relationship manager, your CRM, actually look at who you're talking to and what you've done, and talk back to those pivots of how you can adapt your service or product offering a little bit. But firstly, demonstrate to your teams that this is potentially a positive exercise that would mean change for the future, that could become part of the new norm. And definitely just focus on what the change is, not what it was. Focus on what it could be is recommended for a smaller business. And I think something else to really remember is that to look into your teams to discuss what we can do as an organisation to move and change and adapt. Because what I've noticed in this whole time, and you see many things online shared, that the creativity that spawned out of such a pandemic has been quite amazing. So I think as a small business owner, if it was my organisation, I would be picking the brains that are very close to me, who also are intimately involved with the organisation already, to really show where the changes and opportunities are that they can leverage. So I do think that that's key. The other thing is, in this time, if don't think that the activity, if it cannot be pivoted completely, will be a waste of time. The sales may not be coming now, but you need to think about as we get to the other side. Now, if you've disappeared into the ether in your organisation, your name's not out there, your shop wasn't open, or your doors just were simply shut, that'll be a challenge as the economy starts turning back on. So I guess best recommendation, and it's the same internal advice I give, is that if people aren't necessarily ready to spend now, you need to think about being front and centre for when they may be. So don't disappear, do the activity.
Yeah, I think that is such pertinent advice. I think I was using an example recently that I started a drumming course pre-COVID, just putting myself out there. And it's interesting. I think I did 3 lessons and then COVID hit, and I've never heard from the drumming teacher again. And as we were able to take things up again, suddenly I just got an email saying, would you like to sign up for a drumming course? And I was like, hang on, what happened to my other 5 lessons? So what would you say about communicating? Because I think there's certainly been companies that have done it extraordinarily well through this time. They've kept the communication pieces going across a multitude of digital channels so that when people are ready to spend again, the loyalty is there and they're top of mind. What would you say about continuing to communicate, and how often and across what channels?
I think it's a big blend, and again, depending on the organisation. But if you're not digital, and not necessarily if you didn't have a big e-commerce platform, you can still be doing that piece of communication, as you mentioned. So obviously the commercial or corporate LinkedIn platform. You've also got your soft copies and your back to your database. You can be directly mailing, and the very customised touch on whatever that product or service is. And at scale. And the other thing is actually seminars or webinars or intimate business sessions with customers where you take the opportunity to actually do some strategic planning. So as an example, at the moment, we can't go into universities with our partners who have a huge customer base there, but we're talking to them about the technology and the applications of learning for the future, which otherwise might be put to the side. So again, using the virtual platform of those speaker series that we've been running, so that you can still get the messages out, and as you said earlier, front and center for when world does come to some kind of normality.
Amazing. Now, talk to me a little bit more about this. I'm all about, having a precision focus, knowing what your purpose is, what your why is, what you stand for as a brand. But I think there's a number of companies, small businesses out there, big businesses at the moment that may think that they have a specific product or service and a specific delivery mechanism. Can you talk to me a little bit about the importance of diversification and future-proofing your business, and how you might uncover additional revenue streams that weren't previously thought of?
Well, I think some of the examples we've mentioned where organisations are in places that they never thought, and running services off the back of things that their equipment can provide or not. HP has also been in a global transformation. Again, talk about forethought around us being more present digitally, and how we embrace a market of our key partners to elevate themselves online. So again, back to the strategic planning piece, this is a good time to really look at what the needs of the customers are going to be for potentially the product that you're doing today. So it's that time again to invest in the strategic planning, but ultimately think outside the box, have a growth mindset. If you can think that what got me here to what was a wonderfully successful business thus far, I guess in the sales regime I've always had is what got you there last 3 months won't get you there the next 3 months. So obviously on a greater scale, you've got to think, okay, the business and the world changed, so maybe my product isn't as relevant. So what are the products that are relevant that make sense with the equipment that I have to build, like we did with the 3D printers, or the gin with turning to sanitizers, or the clothing brand moving to different garments. They weren't definitely in the business for face masks a year ago. They were in, beautiful corporate wear or whatever it may be. So just think about the growth mindset, and that's where I say bring the diversity of thought in. Try to set your team up with people that aren't all like you as well, having different thoughts and backgrounds, culturally, gender, experience. That will be important to get a handle on what those customers might be looking for and where you might be able to find adjacencies.
Yes, and just speaking more about that, if you've got a sales force, and some small businesses won't, but others will, how do we keep people motivated through this time to continue to sell? In terms of, forecasting is very different to what it used to be. Cash flow might be an issue. So how do we take them from the mindset of, scarcity and fear into, okay, we can do this?
Well, I think it's self-belief and showing that belief to your teams. That, an old catchphrase is lead by example. So if you're going to be struggling to show the passion and the inspiration, that the belief is there, we can make change, and if we huddle together, it's possible. That's an absolute necessity. If the team, everything starts from the top down. If the team's not seeing their leader, whether it's a small business or an organisation like HP, how can you expect them to follow? So just step back, have a think about how you're presenting. But also, whilst we're working from home from a different place, you need to also take good care of yourself. So I guess on the plane, they ask you to put the oxygen mask on first. And what I've said to my team is, well, you need to be able to breathe first before you can help others. So for us, it was key how we're going to keep serving our partner community, who have to go out there and actually solve the customer problems. We needed to be resilient first. So we've taken on practices and working with the Resilience Project. We've taken on enablement training with specialists like Dr. Louise Marler, where we have been body language and linguistics expertise, where virtually how we start presenting. I mentioned the earlier examples with actually workshopping and practicing our teams on a virtual platform. But most importantly, remember to look after yourself. Get your exercise, get your sleep, and also present. Obviously, I put on a bright shirt today because it makes sense. If I'm feeling good, my customers that I'm talking to are feeling good, and the teams will see that I'm also ready for my virtual work. That will breed motivation, all those kinds of things.
Now, Chelsea, I'm just going to switch gears and be a bit naughty for a minute. What do you do personally on a daily basis? Because you're obviously, so insightful. You're so selfless. You're such a great leader. So what does a day in the life of Chelsea look like in terms of your rituals, routines, and disciplines?
Sure. Well, that's very generous of you to say those lovely things. But my rituals have been to get exercise. So it's ended up, I was doing lots of sort of gym work and went through the same piece that everyone else has, and I went to online. But I've also been living in the country as well when there's been the opportunity. So walking in the countryside has been important, counting my steps. And I know a lot of the senior leaders in HP and across the whole staff base, a lot of people are very conscious of just getting those steps up. But for me, the morning walk, if I get that done early, I feel on top of the world for the day. And it also, it just releases the guilt from, when you've been at your desk or your laptop for 12 hours, that you have done something for yourself. I also try and do things on the weekends that are enlightening with my children. So fun outdoors activities where I might be, out and about on a mountain bike with my kids, or on a motorbike, or, when the weather's good, out in the water sports. So those things help me to get mental clarity for when Monday comes.
Thank you. It's really good to get an insight into what makes you personally tick. And that reminds me, the step thing. With my team, we always used to gamify it, and we'd have little competitions about, who could do the most steps. And it actually got quite out of control. And I think people were doing more walking than they were actual work. But sometimes when you can have fun with it virtually, it makes everyone feel more cohesive as a team.
It does.
Who or what do you turn to for advice?
Look at HP, and I wouldn't have, at 16 years on, you could kind of put together that there's a bunch of great people, and I've had great experiences with so many. More recent years, but probably the senior leadership team that we have, and our managing director, Mike Boyle, across ANZ, he's been very passionate around sharing his views around driving, a strong and positive culture. So our leadership team is very consistent with the higher level thinking and the 1-2 thinking. And when we say that, what it means is that you're responsible for your go-to-market or your function, but the whole senior leadership team are responsible for the greater success of the organisation and the staff within it. And so that allows us then to lean on each other, which welcomes challenge and it welcomes constructive feedback. But that culture that he's built for us really warms us to leaning on a number of different people. And of course, you always have those that you connect with via personality or experience more than others. But the beauty of this, I guess, culture that he's building, it just represents that don't just make the decision on the commercial channel that I'm looking after. Think about it from the organisation, and those leaders have helped me over time shape some different views and decisions.
Beyond HP, where do you turn to? Is it books or podcasts or webinars?
I have actually transformed myself to back in line with the walking. The podcasts have worked really well. So one of the senior leaders in our organisation, Chris Hewlett, a good friend of mine over many years, and I used to work with Chris or for Chris over some of those years. He actually put me onto a great podcast that there's like 200 episodes, and it's around cultivating that no bullshit leadership. You might want to edit that, but it's an amazing podcast, and it's really been a fabulous thing in the last 6 months to be listening to as I've been transforming teams, I guess implementing new management structures, lots of great tips. So for me, it's been that as well as books. The Anywhere series that I've just been reading of yours, and Janine Gardner's Be Brilliant, some later ones.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's always really fascinating to hear other recommendations from great leaders like you. So Chelsea, any other extraordinary examples of great pivots?
Look, we've seen some of our partners go out in terms of creative online events. The beauty of the IT sector, and why I've probably loved it, the travel and the events that you get to network with people has all been very much removed. But what has been amazing in how we take our messages to the market, I've seen our partners go out with some really creative virtual events that still keep them back to communications and networking with their customer base. So this week, HP actually sponsored a partner event where we had Pinot and Picasso. So we had all of those corporate end users that are fans of our HP products, with the reseller actually hosting them on a really nice afternoon. But also it was incorporated with a great message and webinar around the services and products and solutions that they take advantage of with HP and that partner, Blue Connections. So that's an example. There's also been similar things like that where you run workshops or webinars and then finish up with wine tasting. And I think the other big thing has been around the pertinent bundles for products and solutions, where everyone's had to scale quite quickly, probably less customized business in the adaptation to get to work from home and learn from home setups. So our tech industry and our channel community have been really fantastic in getting those products and solutions, software packaged together, because that's probably why we do so well in our channel model, is against, I guess, many others who are very differently structured. HP rely on the breadth and coverage that comes from those partners. So their ability to package our technology and wrap it with their services and the expertise into different segments across industry, they've continued to excel, albeit virtually.
And I got to say, as an avid user, obviously, having the bundles and the packages and having every bit of tech at my fingertips while I'm working from home is extraordinary. So what's next for Chelsea? What's the next big move at HP? I mean, 16 years. What do you see as the future for you and the future for the business?
Well, it sounds like you're sending me off, but no, I've got a lot left in me for HP, I hope, and the
I'm
same
not
for.
sending you anywhere, lady.
No, my role is continue to expand. So, obviously, in the last 12 months, the director of the commercial channel, and that channel is growing across our print and PC portfolios, which extends to the role I've been doing for the last 12 months already. So there's more on the agenda already, and a great year ahead combining that commercial presence across those portfolios in PC and print. So big focuses for us around subscription and from PC device as a service and contractual print, as we see the corporates reshape and come back into their offices, where we can continue to help find solutions for those needs. There's so much work to do. I've got a couple of years left to think about what's next.
Yes, absolutely. And I hope that you will not be going anywhere very soon.
Right.
Chelsea, thank you so much for being a part of Business Not As Usual. Your insights are extraordinary. You give so selflessly. Your knowledge is unprecedented. And I guess that is testament to your 26 years and counting in the technology sector. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. Cheers.